I think that those are the things he did. And to add to that list is, he was successful against Ed Gillespie, who ran a very racist campaign. But I think those are the things that he did. Going forward, he has to have people behind him in order to do more. And as Jason Johnson just said, he no longer has the credibility. So how is it possible for him to lead? How is it possible for him to push forward his ideas if people no longer trust him? He sailed into that office, into that position on the backs of African Americans, and he has now betrayed them. It's become abundantly clear. He needs to go.
Ku Klux Klan hood is not a Halloween costume.
It plays a huge role, and I think that what a lot of people tend to gloss over in this discussion is that photograph is painful. That photograph mocks the pain and suffering of African Americans, and mocking the pain and suffering of African Americans of slavery, Jim Crow, segregation is a form of racism. And I think what's important to recognize here is this is a man who was in medical school, and we are now at the precipice of a crisis in the African American community, with black mothers 4 times more likely to die after giving birth. The infant mortality rate amongst black babies is far higher. African Americans already do not trust the medical profession. We know with the history with the Tuskegee experiment and a variety of ways in which African Americans were poked and prodded and treated as just specimens for medical advancement. So to have someone who practiced as a physician, the first thing I thought when I saw this photograph is, how many black patients did he have? And how did he approach their care? Because if you think something like this is so trivial, that tells me that you don't respect black people. Now, I don't care if you are overtly racist or if you are racist behind closed doors. You're still racist. You're still racist.
Michael, what if the governor, Midwin, the Federal Bureau of Prisons officials, they are due in federal court tomorrow, and the hearing was ordered by a federal judge in response to what she called, quote, disturbing living conditions. What could actually come from this hearing?
Well, hopefully what can come from this hearing is a little bit more detail with respect to what Jamani was talking about, exactly what were the conditions that these prisoners were subject to. We all have a constitutional right against cruel and unusual punishment. It is guaranteed by the Eighth Amendment of the Constitution. So I think what this hearing is going to do is set forth exactly what happened, when did it happen, who is held accountable, who should have known, and what should have been done the minute these conditions became abundantly clear.
And we have to remember, this has been for almost a week. All right, Councilman, the Department of Justice has issued a statement to the New York Times saying it's going to work with the Bureau of Prisons, and they said this, to examine what happened and ensure the facility has the power, heat, and backup systems in place to prevent the problem from reoccurring. What's your response to that?
Where was the federal government for a week? They sent no inspectors. They sent no one down there to make sure that everything was okay. If it wasn't for the Congress members who came and demanded entry, no one would have access in there to see what was going on. The attorneys were not allowed in there. Like, I want people to understand what was happening.
Why were there attorneys not allowed in there?
I've been to that facility.
If you were representing, if one of your clients was inside that federal prison over the last week, what would his and your plight have been, and what would your course of action be now?
My course of action would have been to demand to see my client, and then if I could not see my client, I would file a motion to the court and ask a judge for leave to gain access to this facility. They are not supposed to prevent clients from seeing their attorneys. That they have a constitutional right to be represented, and they have a constitutional right to see and confer and meet with their attorney.
And the attorneys did that to their credit.
They filed motions?
Yes, the court system takes time.
Yeah.
So through all that time, these living conditions are still happening. The DOJ wasn't there. The Bureau inspectors weren't there. Nobody was there. Thank God for the families and the people who said, we're not leaving until there's heat. They turned the heat up outside to help them get the heat.
We also haven't heard from the acting attorney general, which I think is appalling. He should have come forward. This is something, he's in charge of law enforcement. He should have said something. There's been no press conference. Nothing at all.
Well, we're going to keep covering it right here. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Coming up.